rock solid science. This is Rich Petrus. I am a naturopath, and this is the second in a three-part series as we learn how to take control of our health by flipping three powerful genetic switches. Last week we learned how to use this yellow tablet called Protandim NRF2 to activate our genes and increase our ability of our genes to produce the four antioxidative enzymes. And when that happens, then our free radicals are neutralized and our body functions like we were very young again. And then our body is programmed and reverts back to very youthful cellular function, and our body takes care of our issues. That is a very important, and that was the foundational understanding of opening up the NRF2 genetic pathway by NRF2 transcription factor to begin the process of taking control of our health. Today, in the second portion of the three-part series, we're going to learn how to flip the switch of a second and very important genetic pathway called the mitochondrial genetic pathway. And folks, mitochondria are very important synergistically working with the NRF2 protein. And when the NRF1 protein gets to its source, which is the cytoplasm inside the cell, and it does its job, it makes flipping the NRF2 switch much easier and much more powerful. So let's talk about this second very important pathway, genetic pathway, and how to flip the switch to open up that pathway to greater health and the ability of our body to be able to overcome our problems versus taking some medication or supplement or using some other modality of treatment to target our afflictions. So, what are mitochondria? Mitochondria are known as the powerhouses of every single cell in our body. 17 trillion cells. The mitochondria are the powerhouses. They are little organelles that act like almost like a digestive system, so to speak. And what do? They take in nutrients into the cell. They break the nutrients down, and then this breaking down of the nutrients creates energy-rich molecules for every single cell in our body that make up the 8 functioning systems of our body. This process is known as cellular respiration. So, mitochondria, it relates to chemical energy produced. Okay, let's start over again. Chemical energy produced by mitochondria is stored in real little molecules in the cell called, are you ready for this? You've not heard of it in this term, I'm sure. Adenosine triphosphate. But you've heard of ATP. That is adenosine triphosphate. Now, mitochondria are responsible for producing ATP. That creates our general body energy. So if we're older and our energy is diminishing, and then there's quite probably and possibly a mitochondrial issue, a lack of production of mitochondria. Let's look at 5 very important roles that mitochondria provide in our body function. Number 1, I already talked about it, the production of ATP and the regulation of cellular metabolism, how our cells break down the food that is introduced to our cells and converts it to energy. Very important process, very important to our body that we have good energy. The second is something called calcium homeostasis. Homeostasis is normal function, balanced function. So the balanced production of calcium. Mitochondria absorbs calcium and the calcium ions and holds them in the cell until they're needed. And calcium is absolutely positively needed. What does this part of mitochondrial process entail? Well, calcium homeostasis is related to muscle function, human fertilization, blood clotting, generalized metabolism, which relates to weight control, and a very important one, hormone signaling. So, calcium homeostasis is very important, and mitochondria controls calcium homeostasis. Uh, regulation of innate immunity. What is that? Oh, folks, it's very important. Listen carefully to this. And mitochondria is responsible for innate immunity. Innate immunity is the defense system that you were born with. Your defense system, your immunity. It protects all of you, your innate immunity, against all antigens. Innate immunity creates barriers, so to speak, in your body that keep harmful materials from entering into the cell. Very important. So, mitochondria has a lot to do with our basic immunity, keeping us and protecting us from afflictions and things like viruses and bacteria and yeast and other types of issues that we could contract and then cause us major problems. Major problems. The fourth of the fifth is programmed cell death. This is called apoptosis. As cells become older in our body, they become broken and they are destroyed. And then they're cleared away and cleared out of our body. What do mitochondria do? Mitochondria help in the decision-making process. Oh, how does that happen? Well, when our genes expression is enhanced and cellular intelligence takes place, and mitochondria are being produced at maximum levels, now the mitochondria say, oh, I'm keeping an eye on this group of cells over here because they're damaged and they're leaking, and when it gets to a certain point, they're going to have to be destroyed. And we're going to have to get them out of the body, withdraw them from the body, and create new ones in their place. So mitochondria play a key role in the body deciding when those damaged cells need to be repaired. And of course, if we've opened up the NRF2 genetic pathway, and this is going to aid in that process, then new cells are going to be produced to replace damaged cells. The fifth one, this is something that is a topic that people talk about on a regular basis. Stem cell regulation. Stem cells develop into many different types of cells in our body, and they're very important. Stem cells serve as a repair system for the body. So, oh wow, if you're injured or there's an issue and there's a lack of repair, it could point to a mitochondrial problem. That the fact that we need to flip that genetic pathway so that mitochondria can be maximized to youthful levels so that they can do their job. So let's review a little bit. We talked about 5 particular functions of mitochondria. Mitochondria, they use oxygen, and oxygen that's available in every cell in our body. And what happens? They convert chemical energy from food in the cell to energy in a form that's usable for the function of all 17 trillion cells in our body. So mitochondria are very important. They are vital to our survival. They are so important. Okay, so what happens? Just like at age 30, when our genes get worn out and they don't express themselves as effectively as they did when we were younger, and then those genes don't produce as many of the four antioxidative enzymes, glutathione, superoxide dismutase, catalase, and hemioxygenase, and they are the enzymes that neutralize the free radicals that cause all the diseases and afflictions that we learned about last week. Well, when we become 30, then mitochondria in our body, the production in the cytoplasm starts to diminish. They're not as large, the mitochondria aren't as large, and they diminish in numbers. So those five factors that are what the things that mitochondria promote in our cellular function, they start to diminish as well at the age of 30. So, what are some symptoms that we could look for if our mitochondrial production is declining? And we know that we're over 30, so we know what happens with the NRF2 situation. And if we don't get the NRF1 protein to the cytoplasm, then we can look for these types of issues that point to mitochondrial decline. One of them is a loss of muscle coordination and weakness. Well, when we get older, we get stiff and sore, and our muscle mass becomes decreased, and that's evidence. So that's a potential sign of a mitochondrial decline. The second is problems with vision and hearing. I get a lot of referrals from people who want help with vision problems and hearing problems. Another one is, and this is huge, learning disabilities. Children, it's not just children, but it's adults as well. And many adults move into adolescence, and they had learning disabilities when they were in school, when they were younger, and when they get older, they still have to deal with those issues. That could be a mitochondrial problem. Okay, the next one, heart, liver, and kidney disease or issues. So if you are suffering from any of those types of afflictions, it could point to mitochondrial decline. Next one, gastrointestinal problems. Oh my goodness. They're rampant. A lot of the referrals that I get are for just that issue, gastrointestinal problems. And another one to look for is neurological problems, including dementia, which is going to lead to Alzheimer's. So those are some of the symptoms that point to mitochondrial decline. Okay, now there are specific conditions that are detailed in PubMed.gov that are thought to involve mitochondrial dysfunction. And that they include, and I will name them specifically from the medical research, the first one is Parkinson's disease, known as a mitochondrial disease. A lack of mitochondria leads to the affliction and the conditions known to be diagnosed as Parkinson's disease. The second one, it's rampant in our society today, is Alzheimer's disease. The next one, bipolar disorder. A lot of people suffer from this issue, and they take medications to control the symptoms of bipolar disorder. The next one is schizophrenia. That is another one that requires specific medical attention, and most of the time a medical protocol to deal with the symptoms of that problem. Another one, chronic fatigue syndrome. Makes sense, since mitochondria are known as our powerhouses, that if a person has chronic fatigue and you do everything, you rest, you try to minimize your stress, you eat right, etc., and you're still tired, that could be pointing to a decline in our mitochondria. Another one, Huntington's disease, a very difficult problem. Um, it's it's a harsh disease for sure. One that I deal with to try to help people to deal with on a regular basis. It's really rampant in the state that I live in. That's diabetes, and the last one that is mentioned in PubMed.gov is autism. All point to these specific conditions that are thought to involve mitochondrial dysfunction, a lack of production of those organelles inside our cytoplasm. So let's review just a minute here. Last week I talked about, and I taught about flipping this NRF2 switch, and we learned that that's the foundational approach to, and everything is built upon that, to taking control of our health so that our body can recognize what's wrong and deal with the symptoms that are inherent within that particular person in your genome, your specific genome, relative to the needs of the genome, the damage that's going on, and what is necessary to make adjustments in that genome so that your cells can overcome the issue versus taking a medication or a supplement to do it. Remember, it's not what you take that's important, it's what your cells make. And that NRF2 protein and the NRF1 protein are vital in making what is necessary. But this time, today, we're talking about flipping the second of the three genetic pathways, the mitochondrial pathway. And when you flip that switch to the mitochondrial genetic pathway, and we are causing those little organelles to be produced like we were very young again. And mitochondria popularly are referred to, remember, as the powerhouse of the cell. And they carry out a wide, and I tried to detail some of them, but do your research, look some more, and because there's a lot more that mitochondria do, but they carry out a wide range of actions. It's the important. Oh God, this is so important. If we turn, they're so important that if there was a way to turn the mitochondria off in our body, if that occurred, we would lose all of our power and all of our energy in our cells, and we would be dead in 10, 15, 20 seconds. That's how important mitochondria are. So this is the best for last, okay? So last week we talked about this yellow tablet, and I said, did you hear about this? That everybody needs it. Everybody today is at risk, and we need to activate ourselves. And that's true. But today we talked about flipping the NRF1 switch to increase the mitochondria. This is the bottle that it comes in, and it's a capsule. So when you combine this tablet and this capsule, the synergy of these two, research related, we know that our gene expression is enhanced by 68%, and we know that by taking these two together, that in 30 days our cells are going to neutralize 40% of the age-related oxidative stress, which causes every affliction that we go to a doctor for to be treated. And we know that in 120 days, gene expression increased 68%, and our cells neutralize 70% of the age-related oxidative stress. But by taking NRF1 and increasing the power of all of the cells in the body, then that NRF2 protein can, with additional power, maximum power in the cell, then it can get to the center, to the nucleus, and activate the genes to create the 4 antioxidative enzymes. And we know from last week in our first segment how important that is. So it's synergy. NRF1, NRF2 taken together at breakfast or lunch, then we have the ability now to help our body, to aid our body in dealing with 2 of the 3 theories of aging and disease: the oxidative stress theory of aging and disease, the mitochondrial theory of aging and disease. And you don't want to miss next week when I talk about the sirtuin theory of aging and disease. And I'm going to go through that issue of the body recirculating NAD, and then adding the NAD, the Protandim NAD synergizer to Protandim NRF1 and NRF2, and what the research says about it. You don't want to miss that. But NRF1, we learned about how important mitochondria are, and that they are diminished after age 30, just like our ability to neutralize the free radicals, because our antioxidative enzymes are diminished at around the age of 30. So mitochondria power up the cell, make each cell, and it promotes NRF2 transcription factor, getting that protein as the foundation for the body to overcome every issue. So NRF1, increasing mitochondria in every cell in the body. We know what the deficiencies are, what to look for. We know 5 main factors. There's more as to how important they are. And they're so important that if they're shut off, we're gone in a very short period of time. But it makes the flipping of the NRF2 switch and opening up that foundational pathway. The ability to do that is maximized. So getting that protein to the nucleus. So synergize with NRF1 and NRF2. The mitochondria are so important. They are our powerhouses. And when we combine the ability to get that NRF1 protein to the mitochondria, to the cytoplasm, to increase our mitochondria, and that maximizes NRF2 transcription factor to create the foundation for our body to be able to recognize all the issues and adjust so that the body can overcome all of our problems. We now have an exciting opportunity to take control, science validated, of our own health by flipping both the NRF1 genetic pathway and the NRF2 genetic pathway. Folks, don't miss next week, because when you understand, and this is exciting, this is so exciting, that NRF1 is really as important as NRF2, but NRF2 is the foundation. And when you take NRF1, miracles happen in the body, more so than just taking and activating the NRF2 pathway. But when you activate the sirtuin pathway in synergy with NRF1 and NRF2 pathways being opened, oh my goodness, when you hear the research of relative to the conclusions of putting those 3 together, when putting together NRF2 and NRF1, and then adding the sirtuin, the Protandim NAD synergizer to open up the sirtuin pathway, you're not going to believe the conclusions. You're not going to believe what you can do, and why. You will learn next week why, when people had no hope, and taking NRF1 and NRF2 increases that hope by opening up those 2 pathways. But when you add the sirtuin, Protandim NAD synergizer to increase the sirtuins. This puts people over the top. It's what they need. It's what everybody's looking for. It provides the hope for those that are hopeless, don't have any hope, don't have any place else to turn to, told to get their affairs in order. When you maximize the performance of the body and open up and flip the 3 genetic pathways, you will learn next week. Wow, this is the ability, my ability, to make a logical, prudent decision that now, relative to science, validated science, I, speaking of you, can take control of my health. And remember what the formulator of the Science of Nutrigenomics said. This process works for everyone at every age, regardless of your diagnosed condition. So again, don't miss next week, the third in a 3-part series of learning how to take control of your health by opening up the 3 very powerful genetic pathways. NRF1 genetic pathway, the NRF2 genetic pathway, and the sirtuin pathway that it creates your anti-aging genes. Folks, miracle, miracle, miracle. The biggest paradigm shift in medicine ever. And what did Washington State University say after their peer-reviewed study? It's the most extraordinary preventative breakthrough in the history of medicine. Next week, you will see why people are overcoming everything from A to Z when they were told they couldn't. Until then, have a good week, good health to you, rock solid wellness to all of you. Stay cool. It's very hot, and remember to hydrate yourself during this difficult, warm, hot, humid weather. Until then, blessings to all of you. Bye now.